Of all the three-letter agencies that exist out there in the world, the CIA may just be the goofiest little guys of them all. They have somehow found a way to turn political assassinations and overthrowing democratically elected governments into comically wacky Looney Tunes-esque operations. Meep, meep. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what I'm here to tell you about today. Some of the CIA's wackiest, most unhinged acts of absolute tomfoolery. For those who know my channel, this is the newest entry on my iceberg series about the CIA. I just decided to do a little bit of rebranding with this one, but don't worry, you're in the right place. And now, here are some of the CIA's silliest crimes against humanity, starting with Project Acoustic Kitty. Project Acoustic Kitty was a early 2000s ska jam band that has been described by critics as, quote, crunchy yet mid. No, it's not. It's actually when the CIA put microphones into cats, but it totally sounds like it would be an early 2000s ska jam band, right? Am I right? I'm right. I can definitely see the Acoustic Kitty project stinking up the backyard of a smoke shop near you. Anyway, let's get back to that whole the CIA put microphones into cats thing. Because yeah, they did that. Project Acoustic Kitty began in 1962. Naturally, again, as a reminder, CIA agents were just running around randomly dosing each other with acid like the hippie-era version of YouTube prank channels for that entire decade.
Want to get baked and ride the escalators at the mall?
Do I?
So, it makes perfect sense that they'd end up doing asinine shit like this for just way too long. And how long, exactly? 5 years. The CIA spent 5 years of manpower and taxpayer money trying to implant a microphone into one singular cat. That's right, I said cats earlier. I was wrong. It was just one cat for 5 years. And how much taxpayer money did they spend, you ask, to implant a microphone into this one singular cat? I honestly, seriously, guys, I don't even really want to tell you. But I will. It was $20 million. They spent $20 million trying to cyborg up a feline. But why were they doing this in the first place? Well, again, my personal theory is that they were all tripping nuts the entire time, or at least whoever was in charge of their harebrained scheme department was, and also all the lead poisoning that they got for their entire lives because it was the 60s. But on paper, the motive was, as always, to shit on the heads of communists. The CIA wanted to create highly trained spy cats capable of stealthily sneaking by Soviet personnel for the purpose of recording confidential information from their conversations. Now, I assume that literally not a single one of the people involved with this operation had ever owned or spent a large amount of time with, or really ever even seen a cat, or else they would have clearly understood that the words highly trained and cat have never once been uttered next to each other. Herding cats is an expression for a reason. They don't f***ing do what you tell them to do, like to a level where it almost seems intentional. Like, I really think both of my cats, well, one of my cats really is just truly a fat idiot. I mean, we love him, we do, but his brain is just mashed potatoes without a speck of gravy. But I think at least one of my cats knows his name and probably at least half of what we tell him to do, but just intentionally decides to do the exact opposite of that because just like your average German man, he gets sexual gratification from the pain and suffering of others. That's called Schadenfreude. Gilbert's got a touch of the Schadenfreude.
Dad, do you know what Schadenfreude is?
No, I do not know what Schadenfreude is.
The Germans are freaks, bro. They invented their own word for it specifically. They needed a word for getting off on other people being upset and getting hurt. That is, that whole angry guy from the 30s actually getting traction over there kind of is making a little bit more sense to me now. So the CIA eventually, after 5 years and $20 million, got the microphone into the cat, which is terrible. They put it in its ear canal and then wired it back through the body up into the tail in order to use said tail as an antenna. So after that, now it was time for training. And this training very obviously did not go well, as would be expected by anyone who wasn't tripping or had seen a cat ever in its life. And the CIA's solution to this was to engage in yet another Joseph Mengele-esque maneuver to spit in the face of God by somehow removing the cat's sense of hunger so it would stop wandering off to eat rats and fancy feast and shit during its spy training. After 5 years of what I'm sure must have been unimaginable torture for both the cat and the people attempting to train it, honestly, the CIA determined that it was ready for its first mission. Now, the incredibly complex plan for this mission was for 2 CIA agents to drive up to a park outside the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C., and then unleash this f***ing Special Forces level Navy SEAL tier spy cat that would make James Bond look like a naked Ted Cruz sitting in a barrel full of piss, and then guide it with science and shit remotely from the van somehow using dials to go up to 2 Soviet dignitaries sitting on a park bench outside the embassy and record some of that juicy Russian intel. So the agents slide open the door, and this full-blown formidable force of a feline special agent hops out, runs the wrong direction, and is then immediately hit by a taxi and dies. Just dies right off of the bat. 5 years, $20 million, and the hopes and dreams of countless tripping CIA agents reduced to a sticky red spot on the pavement within like a minute and a half. So they canceled the program after that, probably one of the only logical decisions the agency has ever made. They shut the thing down in 1967, very soon after this cat splat fiasco. Cat in the splat? I'm going to hell. So, even though this project was the most clear and obvious failure that I or any human person has ever seen, the CIA report on the project after its closure did not seem to really grasp that indisputable fact. The report stated that the project was, quote, a remarkable scientific achievement that showed, quote, cats can indeed be trained to move short distances. I have no words. That truly leaves me speechless. Let's continue. After congratulating the CIA agents involved for their, quote, pioneering work. God, I hope they don't pioneer anything else. I do not want anything along these lines to ever happen ever again. And I think the actual pioneers would be quite offended by this, actually. The CIA did write that, quote, environmental and security factors in using this technique in a foreign situation, it would not be practical. And they also wrote, quote, our final examination of trained cats convinced us that the program would not lend itself in any practical sense to our highly specialized needs. Only took 5 years, $20 million, and 1 dead cat to figure that one out, huh? Not bad, guys. You know, at least you didn't do a genocide this time. I'd call that progress. Now, if you've been thinking to yourself this entire time, dogs exist. Why in the deep fried would they not use dogs for this? Well, a terrible 1966 film named The Spy with a Cold Nose also thought so, as the plot was basically exactly this operation, but using a dog instead of a cat. Because even the film industry would not release something with a plot as goddamn idiotic as what the CIA actually spent, I know I keep bringing this up, but I still cannot believe it, 5 years and $20 million actually pursuing in real life, apparently completely forgetting that dogs are a thing that exists, despite clearly, again, never having seen a cat or even read about one in a fucking book once. I mean, how did this happen? Acid. LSD. I forgot they were all on acid. I always forget that they were all on acid. But as far as the dog thing goes, in the words of my actual dad, DJ Peach Cobbler,
hello, I am famous musician and domestic violence enthusiast, Chris Brown. The CIA abandoned the program shortly afterwards, deciding that it would be difficult to train a cat to follow specific directions. Are they that stupid?
Yes.
Do you think they're that stupid?
Yes. Yeah.
I'm genuinely asking.
Yes.
This information was released in 2001, and they never mentioned an acoustic puppy. So why, naturally? I can't find a reason, and none come to mind. So is the CIA so stupid?
Yes, I hate to interrupt, but they still did the cat thing that cannot be accomplished by anyone with an IQ higher than Forrest Gump. I'm sorry. Back to you, Copy.
That they conceived of this idea. It cost them $20 million to implement, and that was putting a microphone and a radio transmitter in an animal. They conceived of that. And it didn't occur to them that it would be immeasurably more successful if they did this to a dog as opposed to a cat. Or did they absolutely figure that out because, yes, obviously, and then intentionally chose not to release that information? They released the cat information in 2001. Nothing about a dog. So, this begs the question that we frankly must be asking, and that I'm ashamed that I have to ask. Is the CIA putting microphones in dogs?
Yes. I love you, Copy. Hit me up. Indira Gandhi assassination. A neon green entry coming up here, folks. You know what that means? It's a theory. Straight off of the theory presses, right out of the theory oven. It's hot. It's hot. Ooh, ouch. Ooh, so hot. Ow, ow, ow. Oh, it's hot. In 1984, the Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi, got a little bit assassinated. Did the CIA do it? I don't know. Tee-hee, wink, wink. Let's find out. So, by Indira's last name, Gandhi, it would not be a total smooth-brain beta noob maneuver to assume that she was related to, Gandhi, the other Gandhi, the main... You know the Gandhi I'm talking about, the bald guy with the eating disorder. I think his first name was Mahatma or something. I believe historians are still unclear on the specifics there. His name could have been like Fred or Derek, for all we know. It's up for debate. Also, look at this picture of him when he was young. Look at him hitting the power stance right there, My brother in Christ looks like he should be in the left corner of a thumbnail for a podcast designed to sell me crypto and then get rug pulled to the 6th dimension, bro. Put my whole 401k into Gandhi coin. It's going straight to the moon. I can feel it. So anyway, she's not related to that peaceful little mustache gnome. She actually only has the last name because she married another dude with the last name Gandhi, who is also not related to that beady-eyed toga wearer who skipped dinner because he hated the British, I think, is why he's famous. It's like, dude, British people aren't even real, right? Like, you're good. You can eat. Go ahead. You're setting some really unhealthy body image expectations for the youth here. Indira Gandhi was India's one and only female prime minister, and she had a relatively smooth political career until 1975, when she enacted a nearly 2-year-long period of kind of a martial law in India, known simply as the emergency, which she started because of what she described as, quote, internal disturbance.
There is internal disturbance in 1970s India.
During this period of the emergency, India kind of went what experts would refer to as sicko mode, with elections being canceled, civil liberties suspended, the press being censored, and most of Gandhi's political opponents being thrown in jail, along with Indira's son, Sanjay, enacting a somewhat controversial policy of cutting everyone's dicks off. Well, not exactly. The policy was actually forced vasectomies and female sterilization to control India's rampant overpopulation problem. But, metaphorically, yes, chop chop on that wiener, chop off that wiener. The Indian people, for some unexplainable reason, were not huge fans of this. Turns out they kind of liked their civil liberties and were not particularly stoked on the idea of getting their dicks chopped off, no matter how metaphorical it may be. In response, Indira lost the 1977 re-election, which was the first time that her party had lost any election since free elections were even established in India. But I guess 3 years is about the length of time for people to forget that they were brutally repressed and literally cannot have children anymore, because she was re-elected in 1980. The threats to Indira's presidency, after her political power somehow crawled its way out of a grave dug by dick-snipping shears, did not end here, though, as she began to face a growing separatist movement from India's Sikh population. Sikhs follow, believe it or not, Sikhism, which is a religion that has a fun little dress code that requires its followers to never cut their hair or beards and carry carry various religious drip on them at all times. This religious drip that must be carried at all times includes a steel wristband for fashion, a turban to cover up their uncut hair, a comb for their uncut beard, a sword in case anyone ever tries to touch their uncut beard, and baggy shorts in case anyone ever tries to touch the uncut beard in their pants. Because I assume that they cannot cut that either. Please clarify in the comments if you are a Sikh, whether or not you can trim your no-no hair. I will need to know that information for my inevitable Manscaped sponsorship, which this would be a perfect place for, by the way. Manscaped, hit me up, dude. My sponsorship email has been drier than Mitch McConnell's DMs lately. A lot of Mitch McConnell jokes from me recently. I wonder what that says about the state of this channel. Mitch McConnell, hit me up, man. Let's hang out. I also like to blankly stare into space when being asked questions and leading the Senate. Everyone spam Mitch McConnell on Twitter. Let's get him to come on the podcast. Speaking of the podcast, I actually talked to a CIA expert, in my opinion, a channel called Eyes Wide Open on YouTube. We did a podcast together. You can find it on my second channel, Necessary Nonsense. So, like I said, these Sikhs, much like my previous wife when she found out that those bumps were not, in fact, from shaving and were, in fact, from a trip to Thailand of very questionable legality, were pursuing a separation. Indira, who only likes separation in the context of separating dicks from their hosts, again metaphorically, began plotting Operation Blue Star, a plan to cut off the Sikh separatist movement, not unlike how she cut off her countrymen's metaphorical dick. The operation involved military action at a place called the Golden Temple, one of the holiest sites in Sikhism, and ended with hundreds of Sikhs killed by Indira's forces. So, 4 months later, 2 of Indira's Sikh bodyguards, which, all right, I read that and already immediately knew what was going to come afterward, as you may also be putting together yourself. Why in the 5-star fudge-flavored filet of would you hire Sikh bodyguards after you spearheaded a campaign that killed hundreds of Sikhs? That's like Andrew Tate deciding to hire a team of SJWs. So yeah, those Sikh bodyguards shot her 30 times, and then she was rushed to the hospital for an emergency operation. Which, like, what is even the point of that? At that point, she was shot 30 times, dude. That's like operating on a block of Swiss cheese. Like, she was definitely dead at that point, right? If not, we need to study this woman. She is some kind of god. So this seems like a pretty open and shut case, right?
Wrong!
I don't actually have a follow-up to that. It was pretty cut and dry. I just really like using that SpongeBob sound effect. But I am going to keep talking about it, because this is still the CIA iceberg, believe it or not the Indira Gandhi Power Hour. So how exactly did the CIA play into this? So during Indira's leadership, she deeply strengthened ties between India and the CIA's mortal enemy, the Soviet Union. Which is reason enough. That's all you need, really. The CIA did it. Case closed. Moving on. The Stargate project. Just kidding. Okay, it is slightly more complicated than that, but yeah, she cozied up real hard to the Soviets, based primarily in a perceived bias of the United States and its allies toward India's mortal enemy, Pakistan. It's all the geopolitical 4D chess game, you know, everyone's just making moves. Now, the United States and CIA obviously hated this a lot, but to muddy the waters a bit, the USSR at the time was also pumping Indira's ear full of a bunch of You see, the Soviets, they love hoopla, dude. Okay, pumping out Boulder Dash was like a full-time job for them. They were poppycock champions of the world. Just the whole place was just a giant international baloney factory, all right? They engaged in a lot of disinformation tactics, is what I'm getting at. It was a very key strategy for them during the Cold War to just make everybody think a whole bunch of bullshit and get confused and then you win, you know, that's how it works. And you can actually hear all about it in one of my previous award-winning videos on Operation Infection, a KGB plot to convince the world that the Pentagon invented AIDS. That was a thing that they actually did. They actually did that, and I made a video about it. Go check it out. Go watch it, please. It's a very interesting story. You got Soviets, you got AIDS. It's a recipe for success. That's all the ingredients you need. However, it did not perform very well, so seriously, go check it out. It needs some love. It's cold. it's hungry, it needs views, okay, or we're gonna have to put it down. I'm running this place like one of those puppy mills over here. Anyway, in a pretty similar fashion to that operation, actually, the KGB were utilizing a number of channels, including a person close to Indira that they nicknamed Agent S, to feed her disinformation about the CIA actually supporting the Sikh separatist movement, which is something that I don't know, I don't think they were doing. It gets confusing. Soviet disinformation campaigns get real muddy. But either way, many claim that this Soviet disinformation about the CIA to Indira is what directly led to Operation Blue Star, and by extension, Indira's assassination. And then also afterward, a bunch of Soviet-backed newspapers implied that the CIA did it, so a bunch of Indians just started believing that the CIA did it, and that belief just kind of continues on today. Not unlike the other thing that the KGB spread about, America creating and disseminating AIDS, that is still a popular belief in Africa, America, and the rest of the world today, which you would know all about if you watch that darn KGB video, god damn it. Ugly girls need love too, okay? Watch it. It's begging for it. Look it in the eyes and tell it that you're gonna let it die because you're too busy to put it on in the background of your Dota game, you inconsiderate, heartless, heathenist freak. The Stargate Project. Yeah, we're not fitting this whole tier into one video. Sorry, lads. This shit is just too juicy. Also, yes, my beanie is gray now. I lost the black one temporarily because I have ADHD and I never know where things are. I know I don't like change either, but it's okay. Okay, we're gonna make it through this, my brave little autists. We always do. The CIA's Project Stargate was a highly secret and frankly highly insane operation with the goal of developing psychic powers that CIA agents could use to spy on the Soviets with their minds. And no, I am not kidding. The CIA did actually try to harness psychic powers to create their own secret army of paranormal super spies. And honestly, the results are kind of more convincing than you might think. For real. Look, I myself am a very skeptical guy, all right? I don't run around believing in ghosts or chupacabra or God or the idea that Oswald acted alone like all these other nutter butters out there.
I'm kind of retarded.
I'm the kind of guy where if you hand me an orange, I'm not going to be completely convinced that it's not just an abnormally small grapefruit till I tear that bitch open and taste its tangy flesh with me own tongue buds, alright? Really, I went into this project expecting to just rip on the CIA for being silly little guys investing a shit ton of money, $20 million in fact, in developing psychic powers and magic and shit, which to be fair, yes, they are, that is true. But even I, skeptical old me, found some of the events of this project to be very, I'm not exactly sure what word to use here, kind of damn trippy. They kind of fucking tripped me out a little bit, bro. I mean, some of these fellas were doing some kind of unexplainable shit. Almost all the info and quotes you'll see in this section come from the wonderful series on the Stargate Project by Mr. Mythos on YouTube. He gets super in-depth, digging into the CIA's archived files on the project and just generally being a far more thorough YouTuber than I shall ever be. So I hope you don't mind, pal. He's great. Everyone go check him out later, like some other time, just after this video. Stay here, please. So, the Stargate Project ran from 1972 until 1995 and went under various different names for different iterations until they were all consolidated under Project Stargate. These names were, in no particular order, Gondola Wish, Grill Flame, Center Lane, Project CF, Dragoon Absorb, Sunstreak, and Scanate. Some real neat titles there. The CIA just loves coming up with funky little names for shit, kicking their feet around, gossiping, scrapbooking with each other. I hear it's a real fun time over in Langley. The purpose of these operations was to study, quote, psychic abilities and paranormal phenomena, which they creatively referred to as paraphenomena, for the purpose of espionage and warfare. Although the CIA's main focus with the program would become studying and developing, quote, remote viewing abilities, which I will explain in a second, they also tried to train agents in other comic book type activities, such as manipulating magnetic fields and telekinesis, which is moving stuff around and stopping hearts and blowing up watermelons and shit with your mind, which they were presumably trying to develop to mess with the KGB by loosening all the lids to their salt shakers so their agents couldn't even enjoy a simple bowl of boiled borscht. That's like a bit obviously, but I could actually see that causing some serious issues over there. I mean, first of all, clearly a great way to lower morale right there. I mean, nothing makes me want to completely give up on my way of life and bend the knee to daddy capitalism, mouth agape and anus loosened, like taking time out of my long day of running the gulag and wearing gray stuff to prepare a nice home-cooked meal for me and the comrades just to have it all ripped away at the last second by some unwelcome sodium. That's just an unquestionable bummer. But also, I imagine the KGB agents involved would not immediately jump to the conclusion that the CIA had trained an army of literal psychic spies capable of moving shit with their mind like a fucking X-Man, and then instead of using them to do anything they wanted, just blowing up Brezhnev's noggin, throwing a tsunami over Moscow, shooting 7 no-net contact buckets from the half-court line. I do not think that they would assume that they were just using this to pull middle school tier pranks on them all day. So they would obviously assume that one of their other fellow agents is the one loosening all these damn shakers. They get really mad at each other, you know, the accusations start a-flying, the paranoia's bubbling up, and then boom, before you know it, there's McDonald's and blue jeans everywhere, and they got a flag of Reagan cracking a domestic beer while riding a bald eagle into the Statue of Liberty flying over the Kremlin. But yeah, the telekinesis thing did not make it very far, unfortunately. The CIA decided that they were more interested in simply seeing what the salt situation on the ground in Moscow was, as opposed to actually manipulating the lids and their Soviet blood pressure themselves. And that is where remote viewing comes in. Also, see, Black is back. Everything's normal again. What did I tell you? You gotta trust me, folks. Remote viewing was basically the practice of trying to think really hard, like hernia hard, like pop a blood vessel in both eyes hard, and picture something in your mind's eye that actually exists somewhere in the real world. The CIA planned to use this ability to spy on secret Soviet weapon sites and make fun of all the backwards letters on their classified documents.
This is a pregnant soap dispenser. This is literally the number 3. And this right here is a backwards and with a really sexy unibrow on it. I am not gay.
By just, seeing them within their mind.
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
They also thought that this method could be used to kind of time travel, to picture shit not actually as it existed at that moment, but as it did exist in the past, or how it will exist in the future. And yes, again, the CIA actually did this for more than 2 decades. I do not know how they keep authorizing the funding for this shit. Hey, Mr. President, how's it hanging, buddy? You digging those new Jordans we sent you? Oh my God, bro, do I? They're so drippy. Right? I got them on Poshmark. Get the f*** out of here. No, for real. Johnson loves to online shop. It's kind of an issue, actually. That's actually kind of why I'm here. Well, Mr. President, you see, you ran out of money again. We ran out of money again. Oh, well, what the fuck? How? We just gave you $2 billion last month. What the hell did you go and spend it on? What these? You spent $2 billion on Jordans? Well, it wasn't just Jordans, Mr. President. I mean, we got a couple of Air Forces for the boys in accounting. The boys in accounting, yeah. Yeah, they seem to really be doing their job well. $2 billion on shoes. How do you account for that? Well, when you factor in the shipping and handling, they're really screwing you over. The ship! Just, what do you need? About $46 billion. $46 billion! Hey, Mr. President, look, we have some really promising operations coming up on the docket, sir. I mean, the boys in planning have really been dropping a lot of gel tabs lately, and they're thinking up some really good stuff. Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, $46 billion, good. Oh, did I say billion? Oh, silly me, yeah, that's my bad. No, it's trillion. What? 46 trillion, that's not even possible. That's like 8 times the GDP. Well, I don't know. Just go get it from some other country. I mean, Iran's got oil. We could just go in real quick, just get it, just take it, just take their oil. We'd be like 20 minutes tops. Actually, I already think that's already one of the things on the docket. Jesus fucking Christ, why did my daddy make me get this job? Hey, well, that's not all, sir. We got plenty of other stuff going on, too. I mean, let's see. What are we up to? Yeah, right here. We need about half the money for more acid, for obvious reasons. We also need to dose unsuspecting hooker buyers with said acid and then record them doing freaky butt stuff. So we're going to need portable toilet and martini money for that. We're going to put a microphone in a cat. Yeah, that's going to be at least $20 million and 5 years of payroll right there. Let's see. And, oh yeah, this one's great. So Craig's mom got like super into the spirituality shit lately. So he wants to spend about 2 decades trying to train some psychics to see stuff. I think he also mentioned something about salt shakers and the KGB. It's all very promising stuff, Mr. President. I truly don't even know how to respond to that. Did you say you're going to put a microphone in a cat? Yes, sir, that's correct. But why? Why would you do that? Well, to shit on the heads of communists, sir. God, you say that every f***ing time. But why cats? No, I'm sorry, Mr. President. You misheard me. It's just one cat. One cat? Yes, sir. You need $20 million to put a microphone into one cat? At least. Oh my fucking God. Well, okay, but, why aren't you using, like dogs for that? What is that? What? A, what did you call it? A dog? Yeah, what is that? I've never heard of that. Holy fucking shit. How do you guys even exist? Look, I'm not giving you $46 trillion to watch dudes fuck ladies on acid, and I don't even want to get into this cat thing, okay? You guys are some sick fucks. Seriously, that is fucked up, dude. I mean, I'm George W. Bush, and even I think that's fucked up, dude. What do you have, like some mentally unstable high school Slayer fans coming up with your operations? You got Eric and Dylan coming up with that shit down there? Like, no, you're not getting it. You can wait for the yearly allowance like everyone else. Whoa, hey, remember what happened to Kennedy? Oh. God damn it. Fine, we'll print some more money. I knew you could do it, sport. Real proud. We're all gonna be real proud of you, bud. Okay, I'll see you later. Oh, I almost forgot. We're actually gonna need those Jordans back. Oh, for the love of... And I kind of lied to you guys before when I said I don't know how they keep authorizing the funding for this shit. I know. I'm sorry. I'm just such a bad boy. So naughty. You better hit that subscribe button just to punish me. Oh no, I'd hate that so much. I would not blame you if you actually unsubscribed for that little comment there. I don't know what got into me. I've just been so naughty lately. I mean, you really gotta punish me by subscribing. I mean, I'm sure the implicit threat that the CIA would JFK up the current president if he refused to obey their all-powerful orders was part of it, yes, but the main motivation for the Stargate project was simply that the Soviets had already beat us to the punch. You see, the Ruskies had apparently also been conducting, quote, rigorous government-funded studies into psychic phenomena since the early 1920s.
Until now, Russian parapsychology has been hidden from the eyes of the West. We have had no access to those who seem to possess psychic powers. Powers of telekinesis. Powers of levitation. Powers that seem to defy the laws of nature. In Russia, new frontiers of psychic phenomena have also been explored. Secret research into means of telepathic mind control over individuals and even entire armies as weapons of psychic warfare.
And the Russians were spending 60 million rubles on all this psychic nonsense by 1970, which had risen to over 300 million by 1975. So, just like when the Russians did literally anything during the Cold War, this started to become a genuine concern for American politicians. In 1977, a congressman from North Carolina argued for the concept in front of representatives from all 50 states, saying, quote, "It seems to me that remote viewing would be a hell of a cheap radar system, and if the Russians have it and we don't, we're in some serious trouble." And this congressman didn't know that the CIA had actually been developing this cheap-ass psychic radar system for 5 years at that point through Project Stargate. By the way, that information was more classified and unknown to the public than the female orgasm. He just also independently wanted it to happen as well, I guess. And as objectively wacky as this all very clearly is, I do have to say that some of these remote viewing sessions that we will get into did yield some very interesting results. Some kind of convincing results. Again, very skeptical fellow right here, okay? But some of these people were just seeing some very specific shit that actually did exist in real life. For example, over the course of the Stargate project, just some of the things that various CIA psychics were able to accomplish through remote viewing included discovering previously unknown details of a hostile nuclear testing site, uncovering the world's largest submarine at the time, built by the Soviets before it was even launched, and one psychic woman even precisely pinpointing the location of a downed enemy spy plane that was hidden under overgrowth in the African jungle. Really, the CIA was like, "Ayo toots, we know some dipshit crashed somewhere in Africa. Can you tell us where he is?" And she gave him the latitude, the longitude. They went there, and it was right in there. That's insane. It's probably the most famous accomplishment of the program, since the wet noodle man president Jimmy Carter publicly talked about it and was like, what the fuck? That's crazy. How'd she do that? And all that shit is clearly quite impressive, but not even close to the full extent of stuff that seems just way too coincidental to ever be produced by chance that came from these CIA psychic super spies. Some of the info that these brain wizards produced was stuff that no radar, telescope, or satellite could even detect if it knew exactly where to look for it. So it's not like they were just being fed the information, because no one had the ability to even know it. You'll see what I mean in a bit. We'll get into it. It's gonna be a long one. The primary researchers and several government officials involved in the operation have stated on record that the events of this project are irrefutable evidence that psychic abilities such as remote viewing are actually real. When the CIA was asked in 2021 if they, believe in psychics and shit, they said, quote, "The assessments of the CIA officers involved in the program during the 1970s was that enough accurate remote viewing experiences existed to defy randomness." Which, in other words, means yes, we, the CIA, believe in psychics. Or at the very least did in the 70s because of this program. And all the acid they were on, I assume. In that same session, where the CIA was being asked about the Stargate project, they said that the agency had been interested in investigating whether all this psychic and ESP nonsense was real, and if they could use it to more effectively shit on the heads of communists, since, quote, very early on in the CIA's history. But the agency didn't actually get their chance to dig into the possibility of paranormal mind warriors until the X-Men gods psychically connected them with two very special scientists named Harold Puthoff and Russell Targ in 1972. Harold and Russell were some pretty quirked up little nerds, with Harold being a fanatical hardcore Scientologist who reached the highest level of their fake little pyramid scheme, OT7, which, if you don't know, is like really expensive to do. Like, you could buy a yacht made out of gold and cocaine instead. Expensive. Scientologists basically start you off at this shitty, gross beta noob level when you join their church, and you have to pay like a lot of money to move up a level every time you want to do so. Because obviously God, or Xenu, or the ghost of L. Ron Hubbard, or whatever Tom Cruise worships, clearly needs tons of American currency to move you up to a higher irrelevant title in their church than you are currently at. I mean, that's just common sense. But much like many other escapees from the cult of Scientology, I mean the Church of Scientology. Wait, no, I meant the cult of Scientology. Harold eventually cut off all ties to their church a few years into his involvement with Stargate. And his scientific butt buddy, Russell Targ, was both legally blind and an avid motorcyclist. Just let that sentence just sink in for a second. And he also pioneered some of the first laser research with the actual first working laser in the world in the 1960s. Which, I don't necessarily want the legally blind guy to be the one operating an experimental beam of concentrated energy that the world doesn't even really know what it is yet, that's capable of blinding and paradoxically unblinding people. But, sometimes it just be that way. You just gotta let the blind guy go off. Really should not let him on a motorcycle, though. I don't know who let him did that, nor how he did not immediately die as soon as his blind ass touched the seat. He must have been using his own psychic powers to avoid all the cars on the road with his mind.
Mind Quad.
Another important character in this story was a man named Ingo Swann, a psychic from New York who I believe is the person that inspired Hal and Targ to study all of this mystical brain baloney in the first place. Swann was the man who designed the foundational remote viewing techniques that started the program and kind of just invented it in general. Like, people who are into psychic nonsense are still using the techniques that he developed to this very day. I guess you can't really invent closing your eyes and thinking hard enough to see your mom undressing in 1995, but, you know, I guess he invented it in the way that Columbus discovered America, which is, of course, to say that he didn't. The Vikings did that, and they probably also invented psychic mom peeping. You know, they're a very versatile bunch, those Vikings, are a real open-minded group. Swann had already participated in some other laboratory tests to try and explain his abilities, which were admittedly quite intriguing, as we'll get to in a moment. And when he went to Hal and Targ, like, hey, I'm f***ing psychic, you guys are scientists, right? Can you use science to explain why I'm psychic, please? Hal and Targ were like, I bet, and arranged the Stargate Project's very first experiment. So the Herald dude decided to test this psychic Swann's abilities, and he arranged to use a, quote, well-shielded magnetometer from Stanford's physics department for the testing. It's actually pronounced a magnetometer, I think, but I'm just gonna go ahead and call it a magnetometer because that is just simply more fun. Swann thought that this was just like an initial meeting with the three of them, and he did not know that he was about to be experimented on that day when he came into the lab, and he certainly did not know what this test was going to be. So, to explain, a magnetometer is used to measure the strength of magnetic fields, and Harold decided that his test for Swann was to make him manipulate the magnetic field around him and then measure said magical magnetic mind movement with the Stanford magnetometer. Which, I thought that this Swann guy's whole thing was that he could see shit in his head, you know, the whole remote viewing thing that he developed and all. I didn't know that he was also literally Magneto, but apparently f***ing is, because he did it. Now, obviously, changing the magnetic field around himself is not as objective of a test of telepathy as asking him to, like, pick up an apple with his mind and huck it at an 8-year-old. You know, it couldn't be seen with the naked eye like the bruises on little Timmy, but apparently, yeah, he actually did something with it. To quote the CIA's report on this initial study on Swann, Swann was taken on a surprise visit to a superconducting shielded magnetometer being used in quark experiments. The quark experiment required that the magnetometer be as well shielded as technology would allow. Nevertheless, when the subject placed his attention on the interior of the magnetometer, the output signal was visibly disturbed, indicating a change in the internal magnetic field. Several other correlations of his mental efforts with signal variations were observed. These variations were never seen before or after the visit, which, cool, I guess, or whatever, but don't they also have those little toys for straight up stupid children where you can move a ball with your, like, brain waves using magnets or some shit? Is it really that impressive? If that's the case, yeah, that is. Yeah, that's a real thing. I knew my deeply repressed mid-2000s memories of that shit interrupting my iCarly after a Pillow Pet ad were not implanted by the CIA. Yeah, it's a real thing. Mattel makes it, and it's called Mind Flex. Because of course it is.
It's literally mind over matter.
The CIA spends more than 2 decades and $20 million developing psychic powers, and this is what we get out of it. Mattel's Mind Flex. Pretty worth it, though, in my opinion. Check that shit out. That could have totally helped us crush the Soviets.
I can't make it go anywhere. I'm so mad at it.
You mean ball. If you come over here, I'm going to give you a spanking.
Really go. No, stop. You stop, you ball. You get away from me, you ball. You better get away from me. You better go the other way. Get in there, ball. No! Get in there, ball.
That was shameful.
Anyway, as I previously mentioned with the whole I thought this was the I see shit in my head guy, not the magnetic mind flex fellow, well, apparently Swann thought so as well, because immediately after he manipulated that magnetic field harder than your toxic sociopath of an ex manipulated you into getting that top surgery, he took it upon himself with no instruction to show off the thing that he actually does. Harold said about this, quote, "As if to add insult to injury, he then went on to remote view the interior of the apparatus, rendering by drawing a reasonable facsimile of its rather complex construction, which had never before been made public knowledge. It was this latter feat that impressed me perhaps even more than the former." I'm not a fan of the way this guy talks. I try and make my videos at like an elementary school reading level. Like Cat in the Hat, but with like just a lot more swearing. Guys using fancy words, facsimile, shut up. Just say the shit looked like the other shit, you know? So basically, Swan came in and they were like, "Hey, yo, manipulate this magnetic field." And then he was like, well, I'm the seeing shit in my head guy, as you know. This doesn't have, anything to do with that at all. But yeah, magnetic field, sure, whatever. I'm God, apparently. So yeah, let me just do that too really quick. Yeah, there you go. Done. Easy. Baby food. Nothing but net, brother. Okay. But now you got to check out my main shtick. Okay. It goes so hard. I can see so much shit in my brain. I can see what your dick looks like right now. I'm remotely viewing inside your pants right now, dog. You gotta get that thing checked out. Seriously, I don't think that's just supposed to be leaking out of there, let alone be that color. So Harold then drafted up a report on his findings here and shared it around to his colleagues like a bad meme in the group chat, and one of said colleagues was apparently so moved or disturbed by this that he shared Harold's unpublished work with the authorities, who I guess then immediately called up the CIA and were like,
"The CIA. The authorities.
Your cousin.
Authorities.
Barry, you know that
Evidence of psychic bullshit.
you looking for? Well, listen to this.
So then, two boys in black promptly showed up at Harold's lab and were like, "Hey, science guy, how you doing? I don't really care. Look, the Ruskies are all about this psychic bullshit you've been studying, and, letting them put a man in space before us was already way too much, so just make us some psychics first or we'll put you on the moon, all right?" Well, actually, I've always wanted to explore the cosmos. Going to the moon actually sounds pretty good to me. It's a figure of speech. Figure of speech? For what? You should pray to God that you never find out. So, okay, are we ready to get started, or what's going on here? As excited as the CIA was to finally have some real scientists ready and willing to research the agency's woo-woo mystical sci-fi fantasies, they did want some proof of their own before they dumped a ton of the taxpayers' money into, literal mind magic, so they decided to kidnap the psychic Swan for a couple of weeks to run some tests of their own. It was a consensual kidnapping. Swan agreed immediately, but I just think anytime an outside individual goes into CIA custody, they did technically just get kidnapped. I'm pretty sure that's just how it works. Harold said about this, quote, "The tests were simple, with the CIA simply hiding objects in a box and asking Swan to attempt to describe the contents. The results generated in these experiments are perhaps captured most eloquently by the following example. In one test, Swan said, 'I see something small, brown, and irregular, sort of like a leaf or something that resembles it, except that it seems to be very much alive, like it's even moving.' The target chosen by one of the agents turned out to be a small live moth, which indeed did look like a leaf. The integrated results were sufficiently impressive that in short order, an 8-month, $49,909 biofield measurements program was negotiated as a pilot study, and the psychic experiments began in earnest. The CIA was so impressed that they then sent some agents of their own to be trained by Swan to do this mind box looking thing, which surprisingly, he was actually able to train them to do quite accurately somehow. By the way, if any of this sounds familiar to you, you may have seen The Men Who Stare at Goats, a great movie that goes into a lot of the events of Stargate in a mostly fictional manner.
We must become the first superpower to develop superpowers. We must create warrior monks, men and women who can fall in love with everyone, sense plant auras, pass through walls, stop saying mindless cliches, and see into the future.
Check it out after this video. After you watch all the videos on my channel, please. I wonder how long that would take to binge watch all of my videos. Somebody let me know. Somebody let me know in the comments how long that would take. So, in order to train your average Joe Schmo CIA agent to become a powerful psychic warlock like himself, Ingo Swan developed a 6-step process for remote viewing, which went a little something like this. Step 1, major gestalt. Gestalt means a unified whole where the individual unified unified whole. Gestalt means a unified whole. I can't get through it now. Gestalt means a unified whole where... I'll never be able to do this now. I want to see a disunified whole. This isn't getting monetized. Gestalt means a unified thing where the individual parts of that said thing cannot really be distinguished from the whole picture. Which, whole picture too. God damn it. Picture of holes. Which I assume is a German word because as we've previously established, they in their language are freaky as f. I just did that so that the censor bleep will be like really long on YouTube. You can hear how I actually said that word if you subscribe to my Patreon, where you can get uncensored and ad-free videos. Yeah, there's a good little plug right there. Good job, me. So this first step is just a very general visual understanding of the target being viewed, like that it is a very large, rotund, somewhat musty woman, but not yet at the stage where the viewer could distinctly recognize it as your mother. Step 2, sensory contact. This stage is when remote viewers begin to take in sensory details of the target through their mind, describing the target through touch, taste, sound, and smell, even if the target is, again, your mother and they just really, really do not want to do that. Step 3, dimension, motion, mobility. This step occurs when the psychic is able to freely move around the thing that they are viewing, like floating around your castle in creative mode instead of just being stuck staring at one brick in survival.
Jimmy, will you allow me to breed your pink sheep so that I can have my own?
What the f***, Ben? Why would you f*** Jimmy's sheep? That's f***ing disgusting.
I don't think that's what he meant, Joe.
You know, Joe, I've had it up to here with you.
Step 4, quantitative aspects. This is when the viewing is stable enough that the viewer can accurately observe and count the number of objects being viewed. For example, 5 nuclear warheads, 6 Soviet spies, or 3 hairy testicles in your mom's pajama bottoms. Step 5, special qualitative aspects. This is when the viewer starts to understand the target's inherent qualities, like, you know, what it is that they're looking at, 20 question style, like if it's classified documents, a filthy animal, or your mother. Although, of course, those last 2 examples are the same thing. Step 6, significant analytical aspects. This step takes the qualitative aspects of the previous stage and analyzes them further to produce more specific details about the target that they're viewing. For example, knowing that it is specifically a Soviet MiG-15 aircraft, or... well, I can't really think of a way to work your mother into this one, which is pretty out of character given that I always find a way to work myself into your mother. That was a good one. I'm pretty proud of that one. Swan also invented a remote viewing technique that even his strongest believers thought might just be a steaming pile of dog shit, something known as coordinate remote viewing. Before Swan proposed this method, whenever remote viewing was done at a distance, a person, known as a beacon, would be sent to the target site to act as a signal source of some kind, somehow psychically connecting the remote viewer to that location with their presence. Which, why did they even do that? Doesn't that just kind of defeat the entire purpose of the psychic bullshit, you know? I mean, if you needed a guy to physically be there for another guy to non-physically be there, couldn't the guy you send over just use their real eyeballs the old-fashioned way to see whatever this magical mind man was giving himself a prolapsed anus to see in his brain eyeballs, you know? So, presumably after realizing this glaring issue, Swan developed coordinate remote viewing, which was basically the practice of using coordinates, latitude and longitude, to remote view a particular location instead of sending an actual straight-up human being there to, you know, defeat the entire purpose of the operation. Which, really, why did you not lead with that, bud? It makes so much more practical sense. I guess practical sense is not really something I should expect from a self-proclaimed magical psychic, but still. Swan and the other agents involved in these remote viewing sessions were not given a map or globe to reference these coordinates to, just the raw numbers, but apparently that's all they needed because allegedly this coordinate remote viewing technique, or CRV, worked even better than their previous counterintuitive methods. Although that may just be because there wasn't a real physical human being standing exactly at the spot the guy was trying to view to confirm that yes, everything that Psychic just said was total bullshit. I am not, in fact, on a Soviet warship. I am at an Arby's, and this is not a nuclear bomb. It is a roast beef on rye. although it will probably exert about the same level of destructive power upon my digestive system. A particularly unhinged file from the CIA's archives said about this new technique, quote, "The basic theory of how CRV works is very logical and is easily comprehended, even by a non-psychic." That is, I'm sorry to interrupt, that's false. This man is on crack. He is about to say the most absurd, incomprehensible bullshit I have ever heard in my entire life, that I could find quite a few words to describe, but not a one of them would be logical or easily comprehended. Let's continue. While many theory questions remain unanswered, the fact is, the stuff works. A summary of the CRV theory would follow along these lines. Somewhere, perhaps in the unconscious mind, there exists what we will label the Matrix.
The Matrix? The Matrix? The Matrix. You can't scare me with this.
Take off your shirt.
What?
Take off your shirt.
What the hell is this?
It's necessary, Neo. Take off your shirt. Right now, there's only one rule. Take off your shirt, or the highway. It's necessary, Neo. Take off your shirt.
No.
Take off your shirt.
The Matrix knows no boundaries and has no limitations. It contains all information about all things. The Matrix has within it patterns. Think of these as points within a three-dimensional box. The patterns within the Matrix each pose and radiate their own energy. This energy is emitted in the form of a signal or signal line, which is peculiar to that specific pattern. This pattern has other names by which it is known. It can be referred to as a thought ball or as a gestalt. A gestalt can be described as the pattern and all of its associated patterns. The monitor will read the viewer a set of encrypted coordinates. In very basic terms, the viewer's autonomic nervous system will respond to energy produced by the gestalt or pattern, and this response will manifest itself on the ideogram. It is this registration on the ideogram that the viewer is receiving the signal line of the gestalt. Are you following along so far? The guy said it was very logical and easily comprehended, so clearly if you don't know what's going on, not his fault, you're just a f***ing idiot. So let's continue. The viewer will begin receiving impressions or perceptions of the target area, keys to the specific issues he is concerned with, e.g. structure, terrain, emotions, etc. What has been discussed here is theory. Much cannot be explained, measured, or quantified to the standards demanded by the scientific community. Really? Wow, that is a shocker right there. Oh, geez, that scientific community and their standards really keeping their thumb on the little man, aren't they? The file continues, while analytical data may not be in abundance to support this theory, session reports and historical and experimental data exist to substantiate the fact that CRV is a reality. So yeah, again, very logical, easy to comprehend stuff right there. I mean, you definitely don't have to be a psychic to understand that these guys are channeling the pattern through the signal line into the Matrix using their thought balls. I mean, that's like day one basic elementary school stuff right there. Jokes aside, that is a file that someone in the CIA wrote and then put in a cabinet. That they are goofy. And this CRV method apparently worked so well that the CIA decided to all but completely drop their research on all that other psychic bullshit like telekinesis and such.
Stand back, mother! We're having a telekinetic battle of men!
To focus almost exclusively on CRV remote viewing abilities. So Ingo Swann was clearly a very interesting fellow with a
very particular set of skills.
Like being able to bend a magnetic field with his mind at his whim and spy on your naked mother, but like, you know, who cares? I do that second one all the time too. Whatever, big whoop. But now it's time to talk about a psychic of allegedly even bigger dicked proportions, a man by the name of Pat Price. I always love when names alliterate like that. So pleasant. Just a perfectly pleasant Patrick Price right there. Pat Price was a former cop who apparently couldn't do any of the other auxiliary psychic bullshit that Swann could, like astral projection and Magneto-esque activities, but was also apparently the best remote viewer that the world has ever seen, with abilities more powerful even than the inventor of the method himself, Ingo Swann. Russell Targ later recounted about Pat in his memoirs, "Pat Price was a gift to our research. One day, in June of 1973, Pat called Hal Patoff to say that he had been following our work and felt that he had been doing the same thing for years, catching crooks when he was the police commissioner in Burbank, California. He told us that he would sit with a dispatcher in the police station, and whenever he heard a crime reported, he would psychically scan the city and send a car to the spot where he saw a frightened man hiding." Which, still kind of sounds like a bit of a long shot there, Patty boy. I mean, what if this frightened man hiding is just a guy with an anxiety disorder and a strong desire to crawl under a pile of clothes in his closet for an extended period of time? There's nothing criminal about that. I do it all the time. But then some ne'er-do-well steals a purse from Granny, the psychic cop goes in his mind's eye, and suddenly it's... FBI, open up! To continue the quote from Russell, "Our impression after we began working with Price is that he lived his life as a perfectly integrated psychic person. We worked with other talented individuals, but no one with the continuous psychic awareness of the world around him which Price showed." And like Targ said there, this Pat Price fella was pretty goddamn legit. The real deal, basically a certified wizard, with many of the CIA's discoveries about remote viewing, such as that ability to see through time we talked about, coming directly from Price's work. Another file from the CIA's archives describes the circumstances of one of Price's first impressively accurate uses of his large psychic ding-a-ling and remote viewing abilities. The file stated, quote, "During the summer of 1973, we continued working on a remote viewing experiment which eventually stimulated more CIA-sponsored investigations into parapsychology. The target was a vacation property in the eastern United States. The experiment began with the passing of nothing more than the geographic coordinates to the two subjects, one of whom was Pat Price. No maps were permitted, and the subjects were asked to give an immediate response of what they remotely viewed at these coordinates. The subjects came back with descriptions which were apparently missed. They both talked about a military-like facility. Nevertheless, a striking correlation of the two independent descriptions was noted. The correlation caused the CIA officer to drive to the site and investigate in more detail. To the surprise of the officer, he soon discovered a sensitive government installation a few miles from the vacation property. Which, that sounds about right. I know I'm always discovering sensitive government installations when I just start walking around an area. Must have been pretty darn sensitive for the government to keep it that well hidden. I mean, gosh, diggity. To continue with the file, this discovery led to a request to have Price provide information concerning the interior workings of this particular site. The evaluation was, as usual, mixed. Pat Price, who had no military or intelligence background, provided a list of project titles associated with current and past activities, including one of extreme sensitivity. Also, the exact code name of the site was provided. Other information concerning the physical layout of the site was accurate. Some information, such as the names of the people at the site, proved incorrect. So basically, both of the fellas having their psychic abilities tested here correctly stated that there was a military installation that even the agents running this experiment were previously unaware of, and Price accurately guessed the layout of the installation, but got several of the names of the people at the site wrong. Now, to me, Price accurately stating that there was a military installation here, and even the layout of the site, could possibly be explained. You see, the first rule in any psychic's playbook is to gather some context clues about the situation and then just generalize the shit out of everything. And when the CIA asks you to view some coordinates and then tell them what's there, it would make a lot more sense to me for it to be anything involving, the military or intelligence than to just be some random vacation property. And then when he was asked to describe the layout of the site, he could have just been like, "Oh, yeah, I'm seeing it has, a floor, and what appears to be, yes, I see it now, walls, many walls, but just one floor, and there seems to be weapons and military personnel. Oh my god, I'm so psychic. I'm pretty sure it was much more specific to the actual layout of the site than that, but something that was not specific at all was that tiny little line they tacked on at the end there about, quote, some of the information Pat providing not being correct, like the names of some of the people at that site. Yeah, that's cherry picking as hell right there, since they list in full detail every single thing he got right, but when he is just spewing a ton of inaccurate bullshit, they just phrase that as some of the information being incorrect. Apparently, most of the information provided throughout the Stargate project during these remote viewing sessions was just completely and totally wrong. Real shocker there, I know. Completely and utterly fictitious. The colorful imagination of a madman, perhaps. And obviously, this raised some concerns about the program as a whole. This is because, sure, I mean, that might kind of work, I guess, when the CIA is just testing these psychic abilities under controlled circumstances where they can actually check and verify whether the info that they are getting is absolutely correct or absolute nonsense. But for the practical intelligence gathering purposes they were actually researching it for, that was just not gonna fly. I mean, you can't just have more than 50% of the information you're getting be absolute bullshit. You know, this isn't Facebook. That's just not gonna work. You can't have one of these psychic fellas saying there's a Russian missile site somewhere, so you go and bomb it, and it turns out to be an orphanage/soup kitchen hospital, you know? Not because you just bombed a bunch of Russian children in soup, of course. I'm sure the CIA would still be stoked as hell about that. Just, you know, it's a real waste of bombs. But you cannot deny that Price accurately guessing the titles of multiple highly classified projects that were kept in a file locked in a cabinet underground and the exact code name of this classified military site is kind of goddamn impressive, all right? That's some pretty trippy stuff right there. A little too impressive and trippy in the eyes of the CIA, in fact, as they immediately launched a thorough security investigation to find out how that information was leaked to Price, because in their eyes, that was literally the only way he could have known that. Which, if you guys are spending all this money to research psychics, and then when that psychic goes and does, you know, like psychic stuff, like you're spending millions of dollars to get them to do and all, why would you then go and assert with 100% confidence that he must have had leaked information to do so? I mean, why are you spending millions of dollars on psychic research if you're that convinced that it does not exist? I wrote that and then immediately remembered exactly why. It's because the Soviets were doing it first, and they just had to be better than them at something that they didn't even believe was real. So yeah, comment rescinded. Just go ahead and strike that from the record. However, after this incredibly thorough security investigation, the CIA didn't find shit. Nothing. Nada. Bupkis, and became completely convinced that there was absolutely no non-psychic way that Russell, Targ, or Patrick Price could have obtained that information. And this revelation turned the agency's mood from angry to horny real quick, with the CIA then promptly dumping tons more money into the Stargate project after this event. But, as the ancient Chinese proverb goes, mo money, mo problems. This increased funding led to increased pressure from higher up the CIA to test these psychic abilities by utilizing them in a real operation of genuine national security importance, instead of just guessing moths in boxes and such. So, in 1974, they decided to put Pat Price to the test in just that, the Stargate project's first real-world operation in the field. Well, I guess it wasn't in the field, he was just sitting somewhere at some CIA site remotely viewing something far away, so I guess it's the Stargate project's first real-world operation in a very comfortable armchair. And yes, you did hear that right. The Stargate project was not just a series of experiments on psychic powers. The CIA actually used these psychic warriors in the real world. Now, the operation's goal was, Do I really need to tell you? It was to shit on the heads of communists, and they planned to do this by corroborating and expanding upon details gathered by a US spy satellite of a secret Soviet nuclear lab. At the time, this was the longest physical distance that had been used for remote viewing in a scientific setting, with the target sitting 10,000 miles away from Pat Price. A man named Dr. Kress, the project officer for this operation, said in yet another file from the CIA's archives, the target was the Semipalatinsk Unidentified Research and Development Facility 3, and the experimental collection would use our best subject, Pat Price. From experience, it was obvious that Price produced bad data as well as good. I reviewed the photos of the Russian site and chose two features which, if Price described them, would show the channel at least partially working. These features were the tall crane and the four structures resembling oil well derricks. The experiment began with my branch chief and me briefing Targ and Putov in a motel. Later, Price was briefed by Targ and Putov. Since Targ and Putov presumably knew nothing about the Russian site, this protocol guarded against cueing and/or telepathy. I have no idea what cueing means there. I'm going to assume it's a sex thing, but pretty thoroughly planned operation to go through a middleman simply to prevent this absolute psychic unit from cheating on his homework by hacking into your mind and stealing the details of the site directly from your subconscious instead of actually, like, doing the legwork himself.
Oh, Ron.
You knew. You anticipated that because you're reading my mind. That confirms it.
They were taking this psychic shit very seriously here. Dr. Kress continued, initially, Price was given only the geographic coordinates, a world atlas map marked with the approximate location of the Russian site, and told it was a Soviet RD&E test site. Overnight, he produced the drawing on the bottom right of figure 1B. Price further mentioned that this was a damned big crane because he saw a person walk by and he only came up to the axle on the wheels. This performance caught my attention, but with 2 more days of work, we never heard about the derricks. He did, nevertheless, produce some amazing descriptions, like buildings then under construction, spherical tank sections, and the crane. Price also specifically mentioned about the crane, quote, "The crane seems to be riding on a track with one rail on each side of the building. I've never seen anything like that." And for some very necessary context, and again, remember, Price had no idea that there was even a crane here or even what the site was at all. Here's a picture of the crane, and here is what Price drew. And that is, all right, that's pretty nutty to me, you know. It really seems like this guy was actually hanging out in the Soviet Union of his own mind right here. I mean, I do not know how to explain that. I cannot explain the crane.
Be the crane, be the crane.
But again, as impressive as this feat appears to be, Price, as always, also gave them a shit ton of hot, stinky doo-doo information that was not even close to anything that was actually at the site. I do not know the specifics there. Again, the reports had a tendency to go much further into what the psychics got right than all of that other shit that they got wrong, but I assume it went something like this. "Oh, yeah, I see it. There's a big crane, some Russians, a couple of hot dog stands on the West End. It looks like Jimmy Kimmel is riding a large animatronic horse, and there seems to be a Godzilla-like creature coming out from the tree line. And wait, no. Yeah, no, that's your mother. How is she doing these days, by the way?" And then the CIA guys running the thing would be like, "Holy shit! He saw the crane!" The operations project officer, Dr. Kress, wrote that he himself, a professional photo analyst, and a nuclear analyst all agreed that Price had either actually legit seen this shit psychically with his brain, or that he was somehow fed the information on account of the drawing and descriptions just being simply too accurate for it to be anything else. However, Dr. Kress goes on to write again about the wishy-washy nature of the results this technique produced, saying, quote, "Since there was so much bad information mixed in with the good, the overall results were not considered useful. The CIA officers concluded that since there were no control experiments to compare with, the data were nothing but lucky guessing. I began to doubt my own objectivity in evaluating the significance of paranormal abilities to intelligence collection. As a check on myself, I asked the opinion of a disinterested consultant, a theoretical physicist with a broad intelligence background. After being acquainted with the CIA data, his conclusion was that extrasensory perception does exist as a real phenomenon, albeit characterized by rarity and lack of reliability." One official involved in the program compared the psychic's abilities to baseball, where not every hit is going to be a home run, and every hitter is going to do better or worse than the next guy, depending on their own inherent psychic abilities or how Cuban they are. But, you know, the fact that not every hit is on point, pitch perfect every single time doesn't necessarily prove that, you know, baseball isn't real. So the CIA briefly toyed around with dropping the program altogether on account of its unreliable results, and moving on to bigger and better things, like dropping acid and putting a microphone into a gerbil, or like a dolphin this time.
Fuck you, dolphin!
Fuck you, Dolphy!
However, despite the CIA's concerns, apparently one of their audio surveillance teams heard about Price, presumably through surveilling some audio, and asked their superiors to give him another chance. The way the audio surveillance guys saw it, or heard it, I guess, was that planting bugs in foreign embassies to illegally spy on foreign nations the old-fashioned way, like the CIA and them personally had been doing since the dawn of time, was just too much effort. You know, it's a lot of travel time, you gotta get the mics, glue them places, it was all way too much work. So they recommended that Price get his psychic groove on and bug not one, but 2 foreign embassies for them with his mind. Not like for him to telepathically place a bunch of microphones everywhere, but you know, his brain would be the bug. He would be the brain bug. Dr. Kress wrote about the method that they used to test if Price was capable of pulling off this feat and the results, writing, quote, "The interiors of 2 foreign embassies were known to the audio teams who had made entries there several years previously. Price was to visit these embassies by his remote viewing capability, locate the code rooms, and come up with information that might allow a member of the audio team to determine whether Price was likely to be of operational use in subsequent operations. In both cases, Price correctly located the code rooms. He produced copious data, such as the location of interior doors and colors of marble stairs and fireplaces that were accurate and specific." He then went on to say that a bunch of the shit that Price said about the embassies was also, as always, completely and totally wrong, but that despite this, the operations officer involved with the CIA concluded, quote, "It is my considered opinion that this technique, whatever it is, offers definite operational possibilities." Dr. Kress ended up leaving the Stargate program soon after this, with his departing statements to the CIA including this quote, "There are observations that defy explanation. Coincidence is not likely, and fraud has not been discovered. How is it that the phenomenon remains controversial and receives so little official government support?" Now, the answer to that question could be because, and this is just a theory here, that scientists and the government are a bit skeptical of using magical psychic mind powers in genuine military operations that risk the lives of thousands, or even possibly the fate of the very country or world itself. But yeah, it could also just be that they were brain racist. I mean, yeah, sure, who knows. Now, I'm about to go into 2 more mind freak-esque feats from the CIA's most powerful super psychic, Pat Price, and this next one gets a bit jiggy, okay? It certainly got some stank on it, so just stick with me here, because this was some real M. Night Shyamalan shit. In their memoirs on the time they spent with Stargate, Harold and Targ recount a particularly interesting experiment they ran with Price in 1974. Targ wrote, quote, "In one of the formal studies, the target turned out to be a swimming pool complex at Rinconada Park in Palo Alto. As I sat with Price in an electrically shielded Faraday cage, Hal was choosing a target card from a target pool of which I had no knowledge. Pat Price leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes. Price said that he saw a circular pool of water about 100 feet in diameter. It was actually 110 feet in diameter. He also saw a rectangular pool about 60 to 80 feet on a side. This actual pool happens to be 75 by 100 feet. He went on to describe a concrete block house, which is also at the site. That remarkable accuracy was one of the hallmarks of Price's work. However, this illustration also shows one of the many problems that must be dealt with in remote viewing. Having described the target site with great accuracy, as yet unknown to us, Price told me that he thought the target seemed to be a water purification plant. He then went on to create some non-existent water storage tanks in the picture and put rotating machinery in the pools. Now, neither of these men knew that this site in question had anything to do with water or like what it was in general at all. And Price did accurately describe the shape and location of 2 pools that were actually at the site, as well as their approximate size, and a concrete blockhouse and a playground that was also actually at the site, which Price labeled as, quote, some yard. So yeah, that by itself is admittedly quite impressive. But Price, he's just such a silly little boy. You know, I mean, he must be to think some swimming pool is a water purification plant and make up some water purification towers just to fit his silly little stupid boy narrative, right? I mean, there's no other possible explanation for that, is there? Well, let's find out. Targ continued about the experiment, quote, "That was the story as I understood it as of March 15th, 1995. And again, this experiment was run in 1974, so this is like 11 years after the experiment, just for context. However, on March 16th, I received the annual report of the city of Palo Alto celebrating its centennial year. On page 22 of the report, it is stated that in 1913, a new municipal waterworks was built on the site of the present Rinconada Park. The report also featured a photograph of these old waterworks, basically the site where the city's water was stored and purified, almost like one could say even a water purification plant of sorts, and in these photos, you could clearly see the two supposedly fictitious water towers that Price had included in his initial drawing. Targ wrote about this discovery, quote, "This amazing phenomenon demonstrates an important feature of remote viewing targeting, namely that one must specify not only the target location to be observed, but the time as well. All these years, we have been criticizing Price for making up an erroneous water purification plant, whereas in reality, he was looking 50 years back along the timeline and telling us what was there at that time." So the fact that this man can time travel without even being aware that he's doing so does muck up a lot of things for me, because, you know, as far as like all the stuff that he got wrong about shit, if this whole time angle is true, he could just have been viewing what was or will be at that location on the infinite stretch of time in either direction, you know what I mean? Like, what if that Soviet missile site actually did have hot dog stands in 1854 or a Godzilla attack in 2002? You know, we'll never know. But Price might have been right all along. And speaking of that Soviet missile site, there were actually some juicy little details that were left out earlier for dramatic effect. You see, that crane was not the only thing that Price correctly asserted was at that site. During his viewing session, after noting the crane, Price got a wee bit distracted from the mission and got very fixated on one particular building at this site. After some time, Price was able to physically, I guess mentally enter said building and describe what was going on inside. Now, this whole area Price was viewing was, you know, in a building and all, so the satellite images that the CIA had collected of the site did not include anything going on in there, so they had no way to actually verify anything Price was saying about it yet, but this is what Price said. Quote, "People were assembling a giant 60-foot diameter metal sphere using thick metal gores, like sections of an orange peel, but the workmen were having trouble welding it all together as the pieces were warping. They were therefore looking for a lower temperature welding material." So again, the government had absolutely no idea what the hell was going on inside this building. It was, again, as mysterious and elusive as the female orgasm, and not a single CIA agent had ever seen it in person. Not unlike the female orgasm.
Maybe once in a while I can get off too.
Let's talk about it later.
So after Price described these events that were taking place inside of the building, the CIA agents listening to his accounts were like, okay, very cool, Kanye. You got any ideas on some shit at the site we can actually, like, you know, see? But 3 years later, in 1977, an article published in Aviation Weekly titled "Soviet Push for Beam Weapon" uncovered some pretty interesting news about what was actually going down at that Soviet facility. The article stated, "The US used high-resolution photographic reconnaissance satellites to watch as the Soviet technicians had 4 holes dug through solid granite formations not far from the main large building at the facility. In a nearby building, huge, extremely thick steel gores were manufactured. The building has since been removed. These steel segments were parts of a large sphere estimated to be about 57 feet in diameter. Enough gores for 2 complete spheres were constructed. U.S. officials believe the spheres are needed to capture and store energy from nuclear-driven explosives or pulse power generators. The steel gores are believed by some officials to be among the earliest clues as to what might be taking place at the facility. However, as we just discussed, Price did give some earlier clues than that. Very similar clues 2 years earlier. Now, as you can imagine, this article would have been huge vindicating news for Pat Price himself, but by the time it was published in 1977, Pat had actually already been dead for 2 years. In 1975, Price had actually died doing what he loved, thinking really goddamn hard for the CIA. And he must have been thinking just a bit too hard on this particular day, because in the middle of remote viewing a Libyan missile training site for the agency, he had a massive heart attack and then promptly straight up died. And apparently the guy was a bit of a weak little bitch and could not continue his patriotic psychic duty for the greatest agency on Earth from beyond the grave. So, that's about all she wrote as far as he is concerned. But even though the man was dead and gone, this new revelation of him actually being correct about all that shit was most certainly not. And Hal and Targ, who were still alive at the time, as well as myself, honestly, who was also still alive at this time, mark your calendar about that, they viewed this as the most indisputable evidence they had ever collected that psychic powers are actually real. And they had a point there, because how could Price possibly be being fed the information or cheating in any way if no one in the CIA, or anywhere outside of the Soviet Union for that matter, knew what the hell was going on inside of that building? And Price guessed, exactly what was going on inside of that building. It's wild. And I do mean exactly. Even the specific dimensions he gave for these spheres were only off by 18 inches. So after Price's death, the CIA was like, we're good. That guy said he was psychic as shit, but he couldn't even keep his own heart beating. Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, no thank you. Check, please. And they promptly dropped the program. The program was then picked up by the Defense Intelligence Agency, which seems a bit redundant to me. I mean, you have the Central Intelligence Agency and the Defense Intelligence Agency. That's too much intelligence, bro. How smart do you really need to be? Anyway, the DIA took it from the CIA, and this is not the DIA iceberg, folks, okay? No. I do think the CIA took it back from them, much later, but frankly, I'm cold, tired, and hungry, and just like the CIA, just really not that interested if Pat Price isn't involved. So let's jump ahead to the project's final days in the mid-90s. In 1995, the CIA commissioned what would be the most extensive evaluation of the Stargate project from experts in multiple fields, where a panel of said experts repeatedly reiterated that, basically, according to science, psychics are real. Just one of the lines from this report that makes that case said, quote, "A statistically significant laboratory effect has been demonstrated in the sense that hits occur more often than chance." Well, at least, they would be saying psychics are real with a statement like that if the vast majority of them were not saying that psychics are not real. You see, the experts did repeatedly say that the results of these experiments showed that these viewers were more accurate than chance would allow without psychic powers, but they were also saying that there must be some hooey afoot. They were basically all saying that whatever was causing this statistical anomaly they were picking up was almost certainly not real-world psychic abilities, and that it was far more likely that there was some sort of fraud, forgery, or leaked information going on here than, literal magic. And this report led to the CIA, at least officially on paper, closing down Stargate and ending their paranormal psychic research for good. They are still, the CIA, though, at the end of the day, not necessarily known for their upfront and truthful nature, and they could, of course, absolutely have a secret army of warlocks just ready to see stuff in their mind at the drop of a hat, and we would all be none the wiser. And honestly, I really don't know what to think after all that research. Please let me know what you think about psychic abilities down in the comments. How has this info changed what you think about it? Do you even believe said info in the first place? Do you hate me? Do you wish to see me dead? Do you want to hunt me down and explode my still beating heart with your mind? Just really engage in a lively discussion down there, people. I need the engagement. Seriously, leave a comment. Also, liking the video and subscribing to my channel would be cool as well. Ghost detainees and Strawberry Fields. Strawberry Fields is a secret CIA black site located near Guantanamo Bay in Cuba, which, as the name implies, holds the 4 original members of the Beatles. You know, the ones from before we cloned them and let their replicas loose upon society. Now, I'm just kidding. It does not hold the Beatles because, as we all know, British people are not real. What is real, however, is the unimaginable pain and suffering inflicted upon prisoners that are illegally held in CIA black sites like Strawberry Fields. Now, I've already done an entry on black sites in the first part of this series, so I won't get too deep into it again. In fact, hell, I already did it. Let's get a recap here. Take it away, me. Black sites are secret prisons which hold ghost detainees, which are prisoners that are not registered anywhere and not even officially charged with a crime. And as you can imagine, the CIA just hates these things and would never use them because they're clearly immoral, illegal, and against the Geneva Convention. I'm just kidding. They don't care about any of that shit. They fucking love these things. Look at that mustache. Immaculate. What a stunning fellow. The black site dubbed Strawberry Fields was constructed in 2003, and according to quotes from CIA officials from a 2009 article of the New York Times, they named the camp Strawberry Fields because detainees would be held there, quote, forever. You know, like Strawberry Fields Forever, the title of that song from those guys that don't exist. You get it. The CIA clearly has a great sense of humor about illegally arresting and torturing people. You know, they keep it light over there. And I assume by forever, they just mean an indefinite period of time. I don't imagine that they were holding immortal beings in this place. Unless, of course, they were holding the Beatles in there because, again, they are not real and can therefore never die. But much more likely, it was because the ghost detainees they held in these black sites were never officially charged with a crime and were kind of just held and tortured by the CIA for however long they felt like doing it for. No jury of your peers, no official sentencing, no crime even given, no due process, no process at all, really, except the process of putting the bag over your head and throwing you in the van. It was some real fun stuff. The area around Guantanamo Bay has been said to contain many alleged CIA black sites, given its proximity to Guantanamo Bay and the extra-legal status that operating there provides. Some other alleged black sites in the area, which the CIA, again, gave hilarious titles to, such funny little jokesters they are, giving their secret illegal pits of despair and torture such silly little nicknames. What absolute little scamps they are. The names of these other alleged sites in the area include the Marriott, Platinum, Camp 7, Camp No, and the General's Cottage. However, one site that we know for certain existed was, again, named after a song by the Make Believe Bug Band for some reason. There's got to be some connection there. The Beatles are sleeper agents for sure. It was called Penny Lane. They called the black site Penny Lane. And this site is particularly interesting because unlike all those other black sites that just stood to subject their illegally held prisoners to advanced interrogation, the CIA's euphemistic term for straight up torture, the CIA is really good at naming shit. Dude, I gotta get them to make my thumbnails or something, bro. I bet they'd make such good clickbait.
We illegally abducted 100 Iraqis and subjected them to advanced interrogation. You won't believe what happened next.
Gone sexual? Penny Lane was special, is what I was trying to get at there, because this is where the CIA held captives that they considered recruiting as double agents. That's right, some real James Bond shit going down at Penny Lane. Some really up James Bond shit. A lot more like Archer, I guess.
That is my foot in your face. Smell the embarrassment.
The plan was to use these double agents that had been held and indoctrinated at Penny Lane to infiltrate and inform on groups like Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and other related organizations. I am actually currently in a black site as we speak. Please help. This is not a joke. I hear them coming back and I'm so very scared. Now, if you don't know, this is actually part 7 on my series covering the CIA iceberg, an enormous list of just terrible, wacky things that they've done over the years. It's got some real juicy stuff back there. I already covered MK Ultra, their secret acid mind control experiments and such.
I was given a glass of Kool-Aid, and so were the other children. This Kool-Aid was spiked with LSD. It was horrible.
It's It's good. It's good things. Well, it's terrible, bad. It's awful things, but I hope you like listening to it. So if you're hungry for more wacky CIA antics, there's 6 more parts for you to catch up on, which you can find by going to my channel, going to my playlist page, and I've got them all conveniently sitting in one playlist for you to just binge through when you just binge through. Eventually, I'm going to combine them all into one mega video. That'll be neat, but I think I probably have at least 2 more parts to go before that. Go check out my second channel, Necessary Nonsense. You can come on my podcast there if you visit my Patreon. There's a podcast tier on there. Cool, yeah. And of course, I gotta shout out my God tier patrons. Thank you to Tyler Not Yours, Cameron J, Operator Metro, I Tuck Between, Chase B, DeAndre M, Nadian Syrup, Shalom L, Arya and Calcifer, Just a Koala, Rena J, and Maxman Beta. And a shout out to my 20 buckaroos who give me 20 whole bucks a month. That's crazy. Thank you to Evan, Trent S, Blarg, Fuzzy Viper Shark, Joey L, Al the Pal, Adam K, Vladimir S, Eduardo H, and Rare Bees. If the next part of the iceberg is up, here it is. Click on it, go ahead. If not, it's one of my other videos. That's chill. That's cool. You like me, right? Do you like me? Do you like me? Click it. Click it!